I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We begin tonight with the oath of office with our three board members, Ken Stahl, Laura Mitchell, Dr. Angela Krebs. If they'd all please rise. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Laura Mitchell,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Member of Board of Education
of the office of Member of Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
First agenda item tonight is the election of officers, and I'll be presiding during the nomination of the election of the office of president. All nominations do not need a second. However, a motion to close nominations is in order and requires a second. Once nominations are closed, a roll call vote will be used as the method of recording votes. At the conclusion of the vote, the president will be seated and conduct the remaining of the election of officers. So at this time, are there any nominations for the president, office of the president?
Andy Birchfield for president.
I have a motion from Mr. Trombley.
Motion to close.
Motion to close from Ms. Reed. All those in favor of Mr. Birchfield being president, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That'll move us to the second election of officer for vice president. Do we have a motion to approve, or a motion to move?
And then I agree. Second nomination.
Okay. Do we have a motion to close?
Close.
Okay. All those in favor of Ms. Reed being vice president, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. That will move us to the next oath of office for I apologize, these are not the easiest to read. I should circle these. Secretary. Do we have a motion for secretary?
I nominate Mr. Myers.
Close. Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Passes 7-0. Mr. Myers is the secretary. And next is our treasurer. Do we have a motion for treasurer?
I nominate Mr. Trombley.
Motion to close. Motion to close. Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Okay. That will conclude the oath of office, or election of officers, excuse me, and our new officers are elected for 2019. Thank you. All right, that will bring us to Ms. Ackerman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Mr. Stahl.
Here.
Mrs. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Dr. Krebs. Here. Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Birchfield.
Here. Okay, do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented?
Moved.
Supported by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion?
I actually would like to make two amendments to the agenda. First, under for action, item B, that's the Neola policy that at our last meeting we recommended be reviewed by the policy committee before it comes back to the board for action. meeting of the policy committee. The second recommendation that I have, or amendment that I have, I'm sorry, do we need to vote on that first?
No, we can do it, we can do it at whole, I just had a question, but go ahead and make the.
Okay. The second one is to add a discussion of the structure for board committee membership for this coming year to the board committee report section of the agenda. It would be item C under that. Under board committee reports, so that's item 11.
Any discussion? I have one question. So on the Neola policy, was the thought that that goes to the policy committee and then they'll make the recommendation and then this comes back up to the board for action or for future action? Is that the thought?
That's what I'm recommending, and I think that's in line with what we discussed at the last board meeting.
It's my understanding it won't go to future. It would just come back as a recommendation and vote on that for action.
So once it leaves the committee, the committee will go immediately to for action.
I think considering the number of times it's been on for future action, that's appropriate.
Because this is the text. This is the text stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note, from a timing standpoint, I know that when we were at our work session last week, Dr. Gray made the suggestion, I thought was a very good one, about having the policy committee, once it's constituted, once we get our committee membership set up, that we would meet with the Neola representatives. I don't know timing-wise where we are, but this would be a good one to avail ourselves of that process, I think, whoever is on the committee.
Yeah.
So what my suggestion is that the policy committee person or persons meet with the Neola representative, and then once that process is through, then it comes back before action. So I don't know when that date is, but.
The policies just stand as is until it's done, correct? Correct.
Right.
It's in the spring, typically, early spring.
Is there a problem with waiting that long for the revisions to this policy?
No, I can call them too, see if he'll come a special day as well.
Okay.
We just have to pay, but,
Okay. So this will come back to for action, directly to for action following committee recommendation of Wynn.
Yeah.
Got it. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Okay, this moves us into first call of the public. Anyone who wishes to address the board this evening, please step to the podium, state your name, address, and we ask that you limit comments to 10 minutes.
Good evening, my name is John Conley, I live in Brighton, and Andy, let me know when I'm 30 seconds to go, all right? So don't run in too late. Just a few seconds ago, a few minutes ago, I dropped off an application for the junior ROTC, and my thought on this is it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple, and a recommendation from the major that presented here the one night, it said that maybe we should apply for this and ask for a funded program from the start. And I thought, you know what, that's a great idea, because we were talking about funding and deciding what to do. We could ask for the funded program, and if we get approved, then we can make a decision, the board can make a decision if that's what they want to do. But, you know, not knowing if we could even do it, was something we were talking about, so I thought that was a great idea. So I'm bringing that to you, and I brought the application, so we can look at it. I told him the date on the top right, he believed that was still a correct application. He thinks it's the same one. So that's regarding the junior ROTC. The other thing I had, I took the old peeling up poster down and took it and had it framed for you. So if I can give this to the superintendent, I'd like to have it mounted here permanently, so it doesn't, I think we actually made a new poster, because the other one had a bunch of little holes in it. So turn that over to the superintendent. Thank you. And I'll finish up here. This is the short list of things that the past board accomplished. Short list. Many other things than what's on this list. So it's great to see a new board, new faces, new talent, as well as the old talent. But this list is a lot longer. So keep in mind that the board members do have a lot of kind of say in what goes on. If they have expertise or skills, they bring to the bunch. Please don't be afraid to share.
Thank you, Mr. Gunner.
One other item, how am I doing time-wise?
Okay, you got a minute.
All right, good. All right, this one is the superintendent's favorite. She told me the other day. This is our deficit spending track, and then the track getting out of deficit. Now, at one time, the district was pretty close to 15 million in a ditch per year. Between our administration, school board, community, everybody, not one person did this. It was everybody combined. A lot of hard work. You'll see down here where we're heading. It is the school board's responsibility through their superintendent to make sure that this continues. And if you see these graphs going in the wrong direction, you need to make a change. Okay? For everybody's benefit. Because we never want to go back to this area. We all remember it. And it wasn't pleasant. So look forward to seeing the great things we're going to do. And budget conscious, and I hope Dr. Deschenders decides she's going to stay on a little longer. You guys work out a deal, and it'll be great. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunner.
You're welcome.
So I've got a question back to the application for funding. So if we filled this out and turned it in, and we got approved, if we didn't meet the numbers or something else, we could always say no, right? And then no harm to the fact that if we applied for this, and again, we got approved for funding, but again, if the board came back and decided for some reason that we didn't want to proceed with it, we could say no and everything would still be fine, right?
Following a major recommendation, 20-year veteran, I'm going to say that's correct.
Okay.
I can tell you that I know the in and out of that. I can't tell you that I don't. But following his recommendation, he said we should apply and ask for a funded program
Okay.
and get on the list. But apparently there's a waiting list. And then the next process was that everybody on the board knows somebody that was in the military or is in the military. There's, you go out and rally your troops and support. And I guess the phone calls and different things can make an impact on where the school's at. The school did an excellent job. It would be exceptional. So I think it would be a good two-way street if that's what the board and the community decide they want to do. It would be really good. But that's what his recommendation was, and I thought it was worth bringing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to address the board this evening in first call to the public? Okay, seeing none, that'll close first call and move us into the superintendent report. Dr. Gray.
Tonight we have Gabby Myers. I believe it's her last night as our student rep, and we'll switch over for the next semester. But Gabby, it's been a pleasure having you, and look forward to your report tonight.
Thank you. So for tonight's report, in about 2 weeks, the Brighton High School will be hosting our annual Winterfest. We're looking forward to that. It's a great way to get everyone involved in the school and bring the school together. And on Friday of the week, it will end with an all-school assembly. And we invite you all to come if your busy schedules allow for such. Next week, we have our exams, which will end the first semester. That is why this is my last meeting, because it will be the change in the semester. The co-student who's a second year in the leadership class, she'll be coming in Brooke Warren. She's amazing. And I just wanted to say thank you all for letting me be here for the past 4 or 5 months. I've learned so much, and I've really learned about how leadership works and how everyone brings something new and important, vital to the success of the school board. And these traits I'll be able to carry with me as I enter to college and transition in a new chapter of my life. And I wish you all the best of the school year. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
When is what's the date of the assembly?
It's the Friday of 1st or 2nd, I think.
So the first is a Friday.
The 1st, then it's February 1st, yep. Yep.
What time?
1:10-ish. Approximately.
Thanks again, Gabby.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Dr. Gray, anything else?
Nope, not this evening.
Okay. All right, organizational matters. Item A, setting dates, times, locations of meetings.
We recommend you set the meetings presented to you. The only area of note we would show on page 6 is in May. The one is on Tuesday, May 28th, because Labor Day, or Memorial Day. I always get those mixed up. Memorial Day is on the 27th, so.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item B, depositories. Dr. Gray.
I went to signatory.
Depositories first.
Yeah. To designate the following banks as the depository funds for Brighton area schools: Comerica, PNC, My Class Level 1, Flagstar, Old National, and Elmbound. So banks we presently use.
Do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Stahl, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion?
Why do we have so many?
So we have one bank right now, it's Comerica, that is a designated depository, but we're getting to the point where we actually have some investable cash. And so we really only do our primary business with Comerica, but we would like to check the CD rates and commercial paper rates of all of these banks routinely so that we can become having a laddered portfolio of investments now that we do have some cash that is investable. So we want to put them all on the list just in case, well, a good sample on the list, just in case someone had a really good rate that we could take advantage of for as far as investing goes. But we generally do business with Comerica.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? This is 7-0. All right, now the signatories. Dr. Gray.
In accordance with the Michigan General School Laws and General Power School Districts, the Secretary is authorized to draw and sign orders upon the Treasurer for all monies to be distributed from the General Fund, Special Revenue Funds, all debt retirement funds, building and site, agency funds, and further that such order be countersigned by the President and Board of the Board of Education.
Do we have a motion?
Motion?
Motion by Ms. Reed, supported by Mr. Myers. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes 7-0. Item D, authorization to transfer funds. Dr. Gray.
We ask that you approve that the following employees are authorized to transfer automated clearinghouse funds subject to these listed limitations. All funds on limited authority, superintendent, assistant superintendent of finance, and all funds $3 million limit, assistant superintendent of finance designees.
Is that down on page C? Is that the second part of page C?
No, I was just gonna say we missed.
Yeah,
First.
depositories, I think. There's a second page C on page 7 that we need to address.
That's what
We
I
did.
thought.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the employee signatories. We haven't done that one yet.
Right.
Was that not
It's
covered?
on the bottom of page 7.
Yeah, I see that. Was that not covered under the?
Yeah, we missed.
Did you miss?
We missed
Okay.
that one. I can go to that one first if you'd like me to.
Yeah, let's do that one.
The following personnel be designated signatories for the following funds: Gregory B. Gray, Superintendent of Schools, and/or Maria Gistinger, Assistant Superintendent for Finance, and/or Marcus Leon, Director of Accounting, certificates of deposit, savings accounts, all internal accounts, payroll accounts, payroll/accounts, payable accounts, money market accounts, wire transfer of funds, and automated clearinghouse transfer funds, and John Thompson, Athletic Director, Athletic Official Entry Fee accounts.
Do we have a motion on, we need a motion on this? Mr. Stahl, support by Mr. Myers. Any discussion?
Yeah, I thought at one time, didn't we discuss having 2 signatures?
We do.
What's that?
We do.
So each one of these, when one person does it, there's always 2 two signatures on it?
It's mine and Dr. Gray's,
Even John Thompson's?
right?
Still has yours or Dr. Gray's or both of you? Okay. So everything has two signatures? Okay.
If I could, if that's the intent, we may need to amend the motion, because the way this is written, it looks like only Mr. Thompson can sign for the athletic officials and entry fee accounts.
He's another signatory on the account, along with Marcus and Dr. Gray and myself.
So is the,
So the general fund pays everybody's bills, and this one really has a checkbook, so it's on paper, the money moves back and forth, but it's all contained inside of our general fund. So we really only have one checkbook, so to speak.
And my concern is not understanding how that's supposed to work as much as making sure that the words of the motion that we've got effectively cover that. Because we've got, it does say all internal accounts, so will the athletic officials be an internal account as well? Okay, thank you.
So one more question. So Athletic does not have their own account that John Thompson will write checks on?
No, it does not.
it's under the general fund.
He has a checkbook that he rarely uses, but the general fund pays all the bills. He uses the checkbook in the event that we have like referees and things like that that need to be paid immediately.
So he
On
does
the
have
spot.
an account that he has a
does,
checkbook that
yes.
he writes
Right.
checks on? Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Now, back to authorization to transfer funds, and Dr. Gray, you presented that, but I don't think we had a motion,
We did not.
so we need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item E, treasurer bond. Dr. Gray.
We recommend the treasurer of the Board of Education is not involved in the handling of money and therefore it is not necessary to provide treasurer bond.
Do we have a motion? So, Mr. Stahl. Motion by Mr. Stahl. Support by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item F, legal matters. Dr. Gray.
We recommend you retain the services of Troon Law Firm. This does not preclude us from using other law firms in terms of specific situations, as if there were a piece of land we were looking at, or a special ed law or something like that. It just identifies that as one.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Myers. Supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. All right, we got through that. We only do that one time a year, so it's a little clunky. Okay. 4 action. This moves us into 4 action. Item A is minutes of the December 10th, 2018 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Moved by Mr. Myers. Supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
I do have a question before we vote. Since I left partway through the meeting, can I vote on minutes or do I need to abstain?
You voted on all the action items?
I did. I stayed through the 4 action section and then left
And I think
afterwards.
you can abstain.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going into
Yeah, abstain. Yep. 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 Close. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? And then 3 abstentions, so 4-0-3. Okay, continue. We'll move off item D, so we're on to item C, see, donation, the Bridge Therapy Dog. Dr. Gray.
We recommend you accept the donation of $8,500 from the John Connolly family with appreciation. The family is providing the full $8,500 donation of a therapy dog to the Bridge in honor of, in memory of John D. Jack Connolly, John's father. And this comes to you per board policy 7230.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley, supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion?
I'd just like to go back out and again thank John and his family for making this possible. And the dog will be here probably the fall of 2019 for that start at the Bridge. So that would be the time because of training and so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And family. All right, all those in favor of accepting this donation from the Connolly family with great appreciation? Aye?
Aye.
Nays? Passes 7-0. Thank you again. Item D, 5th grade health video instructional resource. Dr. Gray.
It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the 5th grade health video, Brighton Area Schools Health Advisory Committee in accordance with PA 451 of 1976 and PA of 1979 has been meeting during the past year to establish program goals and objectives, review the materials and methods of instruction, and evaluate, measure, and report the attainment of program goals and objectives. The facts and statistics are below. In accordance with MCL 380.1507, 2 public hearings were held. The dates are listed below. This was the area that it was taking place at, and those were posted for the community to be a part of. So we recommend these now that we're through the process.
We have a motion to approve.
Motion?
Motion by Ms. Reed, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
If I could, I would just like to thank Mr. Vecchione and the health committee, the health advisory committee that worked on this selection. There was an awful lot of effort put into finding a video that would be appropriate for 5th graders and still cover the information that we needed to share with our students that we thought was appropriate and that we're required to share with our students by law. And I want to thank all of the parents, students, and other community members, including doctors and local clergy that took part in this work, because without them, we couldn't have found a video of this quality.
Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Last item for action tonight is item E, hiring new certified staff. Dr. Gray.
We recommend that you approve the hiring of Allison Glidden, special education teacher, Hilton Elementary, at a BA Step 1.
Okay, do we have a motion? So moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
I appreciate the fact we have you on your board.
There you go. Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Okay, that'll close out for action items this evening and move us into for future action. First topic up is item A, donation change for kids. Dr. Gray.
This may look familiar as the state bank does this each and every year for Brighton area schools. This year, Change for Kids, they were able to collect $2,500. So we recommend, or we will be recommending in a couple of weeks, that you accept the donation of the $2,500 in appreciation from State Bank for Change for Kids.
Any questions or discussion on that?
This was the 51% standard. How is that figured?
Say that again?
The 50%. They said that there's a 51% minimum standard to continue the campaign for low income or.
So we sent the check over to the food service department to pay unpaid balances of students who couldn't afford their lunch bills.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item B, JROTC program. Dr. Gray.
I don't have an update other than the discussion earlier about the application. Just curious if you'd like me to do anything with the application.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. I mean, it appears that it wouldn't cost anything other than some time to fill the application out. I think at that time, then it could come back, and I don't know how long the process takes for them to process it or anything else, but I think that would certainly help us along the way, because you know that's gonna be a question sometime down the way. You know, who's gonna pay for it, whether it's gonna be us or them. Now, if it comes back and they said they would like to pay for it, or that they would pay for it, me, I think that's a good thing, because it's borrowed. But unless the application's filled out and turned in, we're never gonna know it. So I'd like to see this as maybe the first step. And again, at the end of the day, the application's filled out. If it doesn't get, we as a board don't approve it, but they accept it, we can always say no. Other than the time that it took to fill the application, it would be lost. So, in my opinion, I think somewhere down the line, we ought to have someone in administration fill the application out, or look at what it takes to fill it out, and get the information together, and send it in. That's my opinion.
Did you ever get a bottom line answer on the surveys? Or
We do, we have an update from December, around December 19th. We closed it on December 18th, so we left it open probably 2 weeks longer than we had originally planned. We had 8.9% of what we needed for students to fill out the survey. And then we just about hit the 20% for parents at 19.8. And there are kind of some different facts and figures that I worked from the data collection on that. And I can share some of that information, but it's numbers, so you want me to pass that out? I mean, it's easier to see than it is.
Was the response rate high enough for you to really trust these results, or?
So, I mean, the parent one is at 19.8, it's pretty close, it's 20%, but you'll see kind of maybe some of the information. Student, I would say no. I mean, you have 8.9% of your students who are responding, and that's not a very valid result. It doesn't give you a good class.
And remind me, what was our goal? Was it 20%?
For students, it's, I'll have to check, I think it's much higher. I believe it's 60.
Okay. And parents was
It's
what?
either 40 or 60, I'll double check that. Parents is 20.
20, okay.
did the survey go out in classrooms, or was it sent home?
It was sent out through the principals, and then some students did it right in school. They all, most of them have Chromebooks or electronic stuff. So most of the stuff you can see there is from parent and student results. The one thing that I looked at was the 3-year trend, because if you don't have enough numbers after your first year, kind of what does that look like? So the very last set of boxes, it says any interest grades 9 through 11. That would show you kind of that trend for 3 years. We have about 109 parents that say some interest of anything, and then the substantial was where I grouped a strong and moderate. So people who weren't willing to give anything up in order to have it, right? So slight interest me, not very often they were saying, I don't want to get rid of an elective, I don't want to substitute, I like it, but I'm not really willing to give something up for it. The substantial was the strong and moderate, so they were more interested in having it, and you're at 66 parents who were interested in that.
How would this compare to other programs that we've started as far as initial interest? If you've got more than 37, almost 38% of our parents interested, grades 9 through 11, and close to 23% with substantial interest. How does that compare to other programs? What's your recommendation on the likelihood of success in filling those classes?
So I can't give you past data for Brighton. I just don't have that for you. I just wasn't here. I mean, I can give you an idea. Would I say, personally, I think it would be tough to fill, to keep it sustainable something up to take it, and they were asking for 100 or 10%, right, of your population to run the program, I would be concerned. That was one of the things the colonels had mentioned, was get the community awareness. Is there interest out there? And so from that, there seems to be a difference between what students want and parents want. So who's creating the schedule? You know, are parents involved, or are students? You know, I don't know that answer.
And that's probably the biggest point right there, is our curriculum guide is this thick, but we don't offer we don't run all these classes every single year. So our students typically pick through that. They're about to do it again here in February at the high school level. And then they take a look at what interests they have. So there have been classes that have been offered for 5 years, and then the attendance just dropped because other things became more important to them. I'll give you some examples of the really hot classes right now. Health Ocs. We can't run enough sections of health occupations. Matt Jordan's class of the CAD design or the engineering program, can't run enough of those programs. Auto tech class, our AP classes, and then our traditional classes that always are always full. Now, the singletons, which is like what I would call this particular class, that you offer one class and then it comes in, there aren't a lot to compare to, just based on the fact that most of these programs have more. So you have to look at it that way too. It's a different type of a program because it's a singleton. I'm trying to think of something that would be similar to it in our school system. I can't really come up with a great example. Because even with your health ocs, there are different levels of it. You take an initial one that might be a 1 hour, and then you end up in 2 hour blocks. It's the same thing with auto tech, same thing with our engineering type programs. So if you were to look through our curriculum guide at the high school, you'll see class after class after class after class, but they don't always run. So from year to year history wise, I don't think there are a whole lot of comparisons because of the apples and oranges. It'd be hard to.
And I mean, I can't help but feel that this is not something that can be run as a singleton. It can't be we run it when there are enough kids. We have to, we're going to do this. This is a commitment to offering it to students year after year after year. I certainly understand the idea of getting our name on the list for a funded program and the advantages to doing that. I'm still just concerned about whether we're committed to supporting this, because it's not, this is more like a band class, because you're setting it up with the expectation that your freshmen, a decent number of your freshmen that start with it, are going to be doing a higher level of it by the time they get to be juniors and seniors. They're not taking the same class for 4 years in a row.
So I guess one of the questions I'd like to ask or have some history from is the classes that we've started, shop, some of these other classes. How successful have those started and where are they today?
You're talking about auto tech?
Well, that's one example.
One example?
But I'm sure there's other classes like that we've started with a small minimum amount. And I'm assuming those classes have increased or they're
yeah,
all
like I said earlier, there were some of them that had dropped to maybe a 6, you know, a 0.6, so they were only teaching it 4 hours out of the day, or you know, or even half time. Most of those classes, though, I'd say, as we invested in them, and I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years, have really kind of caught fire in terms of that. I think a lot of the investment that we did through the bond process as well. And then, you know, just the curriculum itself and some of the teachers we've brought in for those particular areas have become really, really popular. Health Ocs is another great example. Matt Jordan's class, it's up to 3 classrooms big now, so that's expanded. And we've tried to follow our classes with what we've seen in the economy, with what we've seen, you know, happening out there job-wise, which I think we have to be fluid and do that. So I think that's been a lot of the key.
But I guess to sum things up, you'd say we've had a pretty good track record of starting something fairly small and then growing to capacity.
Yeah, I would say
and substantial.
Yeah, I can't think of a class that. I'm trying to think of a class in the last 7 or 8 years that we started that hasn't grown. Again, we take a lot of time to take a look at the environment and see, if there's interest and if it's relatable to jobs or the market. So that tends to draw.
Okay.
So would there be an option of that, the colonel coming in and speaking to students or parents about the program?
Sure, we do that all the time. We do that with different programs. Typically, we do it with the teacher. So we have a curriculum fair of sorts where kids go and check out the classrooms or check out different pieces of the class. And you could definitely do that with the colonel or even another teacher. I mean, Owl has a program nearby where I'm sure it's a different branch, but I'm sure the teacher could give us some insight into how that runs.
So next steps, where are we at?
What I'm hearing is, I just need a decision if you want me to fill out the application. If you want me to fill out the application, I can do that, submit it, or have somebody do that and submit it, and then we could hear whether or not they were going to fund it. If they were going to fund it, obviously, at that point, we could look at a process to get it into the curriculum guide, and then see if kids wanted to take it.
Consensus?
I think that's, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So this is completing this application, and that would just give us approval so that we would not be funding it. This is asking for funding.
Asking for funding. That's my understanding, yes.
And one thing Roger just pointed out, if you notice, and again, I don't know the rest of it, but this is for the Army,
As I read this,
as he reads it. Is that right, John? Yes. Okay.
Yep, I tried printing the Navy app and it wouldn't print. The Army app, like I said, this is the most current version I could print. One of them would go to some Army security link, and this is the most current one I could print.
We review the application before we sent it. Obviously, we don't want to lock us.
right.
Get old, Colonel.
Yeah,
It would obviously be contingent on, not being binding on the district.
Correct.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
of course.
So this is still contingent on getting enough students, you're saying? Or contingent
Well, I think it
on
would be contingent on a number of it.
One of them being the board vote.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd have to come back.
Right.
But to start with, we're just
Exploring
considering
whether or
whether
not this
we
can
want
be
the
funded.
superintendent.
This one, I don't know
To
if this
fill
takes
this
a
out.
year. Who knows, right? You never know, right? Shut down, whatever's going on.
It's
So,
a, internally, it's a waiting list. You'll
Yeah.
fill out the paperwork, you're put in a conveyor, and that's how it's done. And the superintendent gets a hold of the colonel, and they can address the concerns, and it could be a 2 year, 3 year, who knows? Could be 2 months, but I understand some of this.
So, my suggestion would be, assuming it's not binding on the district, that we could submit the application to, I would suggest we not submit it to the Air Force, since Howell already has the Air Force program, but the other branches of the military, if they have the same non-binding commitment for the application, and it's something as simplistic as what we're looking at here, submit those applications for all of the branches, and then see what they have to say. Because obviously the funding piece that's a major component. And once we get that decision back, then we can decide how we want to deal with it going forward.
I think if I could ask, on the survey, we had asked questions about whether the students had a preference for branch. Did we get enough responses to those questions to help us?
We did, I don't have them with me, but I do have the responses to that.
I guess being new on the board, not totally knowing the procedures and protocols, and is this out of line with how we typically would do things, or is this in line with this? What are?
It would depend on if you were actually implementing the class today or not. So when we take a look at a new class and actually starting a new class, there's a full curriculum process that goes into place. So if you're telling me today that you're consensusing us to run the class immediately, I would say that's out of the scope of the normal process. If you're saying fill out the application, what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard is fill out the application to see if funding follows it.
Period.
That's what I heard. If that's the case, I would say, no, you're still in alignment. There have been other classes in the past that, whether they be added cost funded through CTE programming or that, we hadn't expanded. So we had to wait to see if there was added cost funding in that. And we did it with supplies too. So that wouldn't be completely out of the ordinary. It would be out of the ordinary if you skipped over the process of the review of the coursework and implemented it directly tonight. But if you want us to look and see if we can generate funding, and then that would have generated interest, I don't think that would be out of the way.
And was did I hear correctly that the recommendation that you had made would be that all 4 branches be explored through this process?
My suggestion was
from a
not,
funding standpoint.
not to do Air Force, because Howell already has an Air Force program, but, I mean, I guess I don't have a problem if we want to do Air Force as well, but I think that's probably not.
I thought the Williams didn't have one available.
Be redundant.
That's what, we had heard that at one point.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Now, I don't know that we've concretely been able to say yes or no on that. But
I would agree, I'd look at that all for some kind of funding application or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would like to look at that form a little bit. I'm not sure that this is just for funding. It looks like to apply for a program, just reading off the first couple of signatures. I'd like to double check that, see if it's just about funding.
Okay.
I was going to suggest it was number 3A. I don't know if it means what I think it means, but I think if they approve it, then we are automatically going into contract.
What we would do is call each branch and ask them how we submit for funding.
So I think what I'm hearing, I think there seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody's, there's an overwhelming disagreement to this, that Dr. Gray, when you were assigned somebody to explore the 4 branches in the application process for funding alone, non-binding, but also verify whether or not the completion of this application somehow commits us or binds us to more than what we want to just do at this point in time, which is to explore the opportunity for that.
We're clear on that.
Is that accurate? Okay. Okay. And then what do you think update-wise?
We're going to need a month.
A month? Okay, so let's keep this off. I mean, let's make sure this holds, but we're not going to be discussing it for, let's put it out a month. And maintain it for future.
If it was one branch, I could say we could definitely get it done in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
You want to be thorough.
So we're going to keep it in for future?
For future, but hold for a month and put it.
So first meeting in February.
Okay, is that right? Yeah. Close enough. Close enough. Okay. Item C, MSP Grant Safety and Security Window Film. Dr. Gray.
You give that to Dr. Gissinger, she ran it.
No, sorry. Dr. Gissinger.
We were fortunate enough to be a recipient of a Michigan State Police Grant Award, and we decided we were going to put a security film over our windows as part of the grant, and we ran a sealed bid. The bids were opened on Monday, December 17th. We had 4 bidders, and we're recommending that the board approve Templar as the bid award. We bid out 8 mil film, and Templar bid 12 mil film for about the price of the 8 mil film, which is thicker and provides about 50% better coverage than the 8 mil film. And we also have extra money in our grant to expand the scope of what we originally wanted covered, because we weren't really sure where the bids were going to come in. So we're anticipating that we will be able to have more coverage of areas that weren't in our original bid scope.
So what was the cost of the film?
$47,425.
47 what?
$47,425.
Got it. Okay.
Templar, the company out of Fowlerville.
I believe they're out of Brighton.
You said that they quoted us on different specifications than what we went out for.
Yes, we actually asked for 8 mil specifications and they came back with 12 mil.
Do we know if any of the other vendors that participated in the RFP could have provided that same quality of product at a lower price?
We did not ask, but I'm sure they could have. I'm not sure what the price would be, but we asked for alternates and they didn't provide that.
Well, it says alternate. Under West Michigan Glass, there's a $747, there's a $73.96, and there's a $41.15.
Right, those alternates are for the office windows at Hawkins, the windows by door number 29 at Horning, the windows by door number 29 at Spencer, and the windows by door number 15 at Miller. But none of them bid an alternate thickness of glass coverage other than Templar. And you can see from the pricing that they're competitive.
So these other three are at 8 mil and Templar's at 12 mil?
That's right. And Michigan Glass's alternate, or I'm sorry, West Michigan's alternate, you can see is a little bit out of whack. So we inquired about that and they think that they just left a 0 off the end of their alternate.
So then what's actually getting filled, all the buildings?
If you look at in your board package, you've got the scope there, perhaps attached, maybe not. Nope. So it's actually here in the RFP, the areas that are going to be covered. And essentially, we were able to cover almost all areas, right? So I have the maps here if you want to take a look at them.
Okay, well, we'll review that.
Yeah, we can pass it around.
Yeah, that's fine. That's it.
If you'd like to review scope, I'd just say set a time, come in, you could run through it.
I'm just concerned about the process. If we're awarding the bid for a different product than what we went out for, was it an appropriate, did we follow all of the rules that we needed to give each of these participants a fair shot at the business?
We did allow for additional alternates in the scope of the RFP, so they were more than able to bid out other thicknesses if they preferred. This company was the only one that did. So they met all companies met our minimum requirements.
I do have some familiarity with this company, not extensive, but they do, this is one of their specialty areas, is bullet resistant glass.
I don't know if they're currently there, but they have a child in our district also. I think some of the parents graduate. I think they are.
Okay, any other questions or discussion at this point? Okay. Item D, school of choice, fall of 2019, Dr. Gray.
It's a pretty typical time that we bring back the recommendation for the next school year in terms of school of choice. As you can see, we're asking you to approve in a couple of weeks the unlimited school of choice options for grades JK through 12. The sheet that you just had passed out, it should look like this with red numbers on it. If you take a look at that, typically we talk about percentages. This is from our fall count. Again, we've talked a number of times in the past about percentages and where we want to be in terms of the district. So as I walk you through the document, if you look at the top and you look at BAS as a total, we sit at about 17%, just under, about 16.8 in terms of our percentage. That does not include the bridge. The bridge we have is kind of a standalone. They're about 50-50 in terms of that, and some consortium kids. So what are our consortium kids? They're the kids we trade with the other schools in the LATEC programming throughout our county. So if you look at the bottom, it's kind of a plus-minus thing. We send kids out, they send kids in, so it's kind of a wash. If you look at each building individually, you can track down by grade and you can kind of see the different breakdowns in terms of percentages. A couple of things to kind of point out. There's a high point in one of the grades, second grade at Hilton. There was an extra all-day kindergarten classroom opened up in late August. All of those kids are school of choice. That's what fluctuates that percentage a little bit. And the only other one that's like that is the 24% for the third grade at Horning. That one a couple of years ago had an additional section placed in that particular building. That's why that particular grade is higher. All the rest are tracking pretty normally in terms of percentages. If you go all the way down the list, you can kind of see that as you go. But we would entertain any questions. We also break it down by within the county and then obviously contiguous counties as well. We anticipate next year when we looked at birth rates and our normal processes that we'll probably be in about the exact same position, 6,000 to 6,100. That kind of seems like the number we've landed on. About 1,000 of that, 999 obviously, are school of choice. That's pretty well in line with where we've been for the last several years. So that's kind of where we're at.
Just out of curiosity, I noticed that when they get to Maltby Scranton, the percentage seems to go down and then comes back up to the norm in high school. How does that happen? Reason for it is a phenomenon?
So when you look at Maltby and Scranton, you could have kids that have been with us for elementary that go back to their home district. You also have a larger enrollment of in-district kids because we have private school students that might be coming to us that otherwise weren't with us. So that can fluctuate that number by like percentage.
Like St. Pat's, etc. Okay.
That could be upwards of 30 kids.
Right.
So if you look at 30 kids over one grade level, that could tweak it by a couple.
Thank you.
So one of the questions I've asked over at really almost every year that I've been on the board is, what, and I'll continue to ask, what is the sweet spot for the board? And I think it's still a question we need to answer, not necessarily tonight, but at least sometime soon, of what is the percentage that we're comfortable with on school of choice. Again, I look at this more broadly. I know Dr. Gray a number of years ago when this first came up was something around 15%, I believe, is what the number you had provided. We have a lot of numbers here in front of us that are upwards of that, even the 20% range. The hospital coming in, a lot of neighborhoods turning over with younger families. We're seeing definitely an influx of students that are moving into the community. And what is that balance that we want to have, and what is that balance that we're comfortable with as a board for setting some of those parameters on school choice? And I understand it's a difficult conversation because, we're a very attractive district and people want to be here. But we also have to make sure we're taking care of our community first. So something to be thinking about as a board. I'm going to continue to press that issue. That's one of those items that I'm passionate about, but I think it's important that we keep that front and center and continue to ask ourselves that question. What is that percentage? Any other conversation, discussion?
The only question I have is, as we go through the process and we make the commitment for an unlimited school of choice, there's obviously, economic impacts, millages, there's all kinds of factors that influence enrollment in adjacent districts.
Yeah.
School district geographic boundaries may change, you never know. If something like that were to happen, where there was a significant influx from a timing standpoint, once we make the commitment to unlimited school of choice, what tools do we have at our disposal, Dr. Gray, to manage that process as it does progress through that fluid process?
It depends on which one of those happens. If it continues with the trend we've seen, kind of the slow, steady 0.5% to 1%, that's pretty easy to manage. If there was ever something catastrophic and contiguous or whatever, that would be typically something that would go through the state in terms of that, and then there would be a time frame that goes along with that. That's what I've seen in the past. Remember too that this is something we talk about most years, but not all years. What's the different process between limited and unlimited? So we typically bring this to you presently because our kindergarten roundup happens late February. So I think we're the 19th and 26th this year. So that's the number one question we get at kindergarten roundup is your school of choice window open? We also like to open it in that grade only prior to or right about the time we do kindergarten roundup because the processing of new JK and kindergarten students is immense. It takes a long time. So we don't typically wait till May or June because we typically open it a little later for the other grades. But we like to do that one first because it seems to take more time. It's the first time they're ever coming to us in either a JK or a kindergarten type situation. So that's why we ask. Now, when we open the school of choice window for unlimited, it's usually open for several months. And anywhere from April through the first week of school typically is what we do. If you do limited school of choice, which is an option, it's a 1 month period. That's the biggest difference, I would say, in terms of that. So you'd have to pick the month that you were going to offer a limited school of choice option. And most school districts typically would pick August. That's when they do limited. As a district, they do that. But that was
Why August versus June as an example?
you could do either, but the end of the school year, people kind of check out. We don't see a ton of kids come in June. We see a ton of school of choice. We see our largest number of school of choice kids come in right after kindergarten roundup for that particular grade. And then kind of in May, when we open the window and it's publicized, then it trails off in June and July as people are vacationing or doing whatever they do in the summer. And then August is just really, really heavy. It's very, very busy in terms of that. So if you were going to pick one, it would actually be easier for us to manage if you picked May, if you were going to do a limited school of choice, because our scheduling would be done. You know, we'd be through May and we'd lock in our classes and away we'd go. But August you'd probably generate more. Just depends on what you want to do.
I have a question. Dr. Gray, when we started talking about the bond process, I think you mentioned that we have to do a population survey as part of that. Did we have to do a new one in preparing this year's bond application?
Yep.
So does that show any, give any indication of expected change in our student population over the next 5 years?
We didn't see anything significant. So they run it out, I think is it 30 years?
Yeah.
They run it out 30 years. And, you know, it's a pretty generic thing that you have to do for it. So I would say there is some dependability to it, but I would say there also could be some variances to it. You know, if, like Mr. Myers was saying, something changed dramatically in a county or in an area. But we didn't see like significant, we didn't see like 500, 600, 700 more kids. We just didn't see that. It went up a little bit, but kind of that.
I just have a clarification question. So exactly what Andy was talking about what the percentage is. Let's say we made it hypothetically 5%. So would we actually go into a school year with empty chairs? Is that what we're looking at? We say that?
When you say 5%, I don't know what you mean.
The percentage of school choice.
So today we sit at 17.
Right.
Okay, district-wide. As you look across the buildings, they're all pretty much in that scope of the 14 to 17, 18 range.
Right.
Okay? So if you're saying 5%, are you saying?
Let's say that's a hypothetical
So
number.
district-wide
That's the
number,
number.
5% school of choice.
Right.
So you're gonna have to let 12% filter out. You see what I mean?
Right.
So what you would do is as senior classes left, and they're leaving at 18, 19%, you would replace the incoming classes with 5, whereas today we sit at 16, 13, 7, 20. Okay, Okay, so you'd have to tweak that.
So I guess where I'm going with that is that we could ultimately end up not in that sweet spot that we'd like to be at.
Well, it depends on what you consider your sweet spot. So as far as our buildings are concerned right now, we run about 6,000 kids. We run about 6,000 kids for 4 or 5 years now. Before we had less. You know, if you drop to 5%, think about that. So if we have 1,000 school of choice kids right now, okay, and that gets us about 20%, and you were going to drop to 5%, you know, you'd have to have a quarter of that, right? So you drop to 250 school of choice, so you'd go from 6,000 to 5,250. Primarily is what you would do.
Okay, the bigger discussion is what is that sweet spot? What is that number we want our high school to have? And then the percentage would have to come out of that.
I think you have to look at it as a district.
Right.
I really do. High school's a little bit of a different beast. Anytime you have transitional periods, so elementary to multi, there's a transition. You can see an uptick or you can see a downslope. Multi to Scranton, there are things that can happen from year to year at the elementaries. You know, it really depends on that incoming JK and kindergarten class and how they transition through. That's really what it looks like. And for some reason, third grade, we get a lot of third graders. I don't know why that is, but we do. And then from Scranton to the high school, again, you're picking up a number of private school kids, and then you're getting a bunch of transfers. So to solidify that number now, we get about the same number each year. There's a varying number of reasons for that. And the high school, I would say, is just kind of a different beast in terms of that.
It's just a big balancing act to get to it.
And the hardest balancing act for us is kindergarten, because it's the only grade we have no contact. You know, we don't have any context with it because we go from 0 to possibly what? You know, now the last 3 years we've been within 1, so we've estimated 485, and we've been 485, 486, 486. So we've been within 1 of our estimation, which it went well, but could that jump to 520? Could it drop to 450? Yeah, we typically staff for 450 and then tweak it as we get to the 485, 450, 460. But kindergarten JK is the biggest guessing game, for sure.
Well, just to follow up on Mr. Stahl's comment, so if you accept the premise that as a district, our sweet spot is about 6,000, give or take, which seems to be proven by the track record that we've had the last 4 or 5 years, and you accept the notion that the district, because of turnover, growth, there may be a growth, whatever that number is, within district. The question then becomes, if we're still trying to maintain that sweet spot while we are experiencing a growth of in-district students, are we better able to meet that sweet spot through the management of the school of choice through unlimited or limited? I mean, because to me, that's the bottom line. I mean, if you accept both of those premises,
sure,
which I tend to think is a fairly accurate indicator of what's going on, to me, that's the ultimate question is, which of those alternatives give you the best ability? Because ultimately, then, your percentage of school of choice are going to go down anyway. I mean, if you've got a greater percentage of
way easier to manage
with limited or unlimited?
Limited, for sure. Just think about it. I only have to collect paperwork for 1 month. I can collect it in the month of May, and then I have June, July, and August to just balance my classes and go. I can be done by the first week in June. And then you go from there. Now, the risk you have is if you're adding a certain number of school of choice that backfill the same number that are graduating, you'd have to adjust your budget each year by that percentage that you're going backwards. Unless your incoming move-ins equate for that, which we don't know. We haven't seen it yet.
Right.
So our in-district kids for the last 4 or 5 years have stuck at the 5,000. Our school of choice has stuck primarily at the 1,000. That's why we've been in about the 6,000 range. Now, if you're going to go limited and you see a reduction of this percentage, if you don't backfill that percentage with a certain number of move-ins to the district or residents, your budget will be less. So you could drop from 6,000, what is it, 6,034, you could drop to 5,900 or 5,950 or something like that. And then you'd have to adjust, and then the next year you could do the same thing and the same thing. Because long term, unless your move-ins match the number that you didn't get through the normal unlimited process, there would be a disparity.
And that'll affect programming as well, because you may not have enough to do what you want to do. So,
I wish we could just stick it at 6,000
yeah.
and it would run forever, but you can't guarantee that. You know, yeah, we've had that for 4 or 5 years. It's been real close. We've been able to manage it at that percentage, but you know, we can't. We try, but we can't 100% predict.
Just taking the last 2 years as a snapshot, if we, I'm assuming we've got the data to show what our move-ins have been in a 12-month calendar. Is that so?
Yeah, we track
just
all
to
that.
get a
Yeah, we have
somewhat
not
of
seen a
sense
huge.
of-
We have not seen a huge spike. Last couple of years, like I'll give you a great example. We you know just finished an enrollment period for second semester. We had 40 move-ins. Okay, the year before we had almost 40 move-ins. It was very, very close. So
40
that
total students or 40 families?
40 total students.
Okay.
Yep. So that number has been solid the last 2 years. Now, could it shoot to 60 or drop to 30? Yes, but that trend's been fairly consistent for the last 3 or 4. It's been better. It's been better for a long time. We didn't see that big of a number of movements at that juncture.
Have we had to deny anybody who has applied as a school choice?
Oh yeah, we do every year.
What, how many?
Depends on the year, 5 to 10 maybe.
Because the grade area they're applying to is full?
That or they have issues. They don't qualify. Because there are qualifications.
Any other discussion? Thank you. Item E, certified staff resignation. Dr. Gray.
We'll recommend in a couple of weeks you accept the resignation of Chelsea Onstead, a teacher that was on leave, that has chosen to go into a different career.
Discussion? All right, that brings us to item F, amended budget 2018-19. Dr. Gistinger.
Yes, you have in your board packet the first amended budget of the 18-19 school year, and we're projecting that we're tracking our revenues and expenditures as expected. The big change is that in enrollment, we budgeted flat enrollment every year to be conservative, and our enrollment increased a couple hundred FTE over our original projections. There's also some offsetting expenditures as well. We bought some furniture for our science rooms at the middle school level that was not in the original budget, kind of leaking over from finishing up our 2015 bond. You can't exactly cut the bills off right where the bond money runs out, so a little bit has to spill into the general fund, so there's a little bit of that as well. But all good news in the budget area. We're planning on putting $900 and some thousand into our fund balance by the end of the fiscal year. And also too, I meant to mention when we were talking about the depositories, we have yet to borrow money this year, and we're already well into January. And things are looking good from a cash flow perspective. We may sneak out of the year without having to borrow any money. And if that's the case, I don't know the data, but I'm guessing it's probably 12 or 13 years, maybe longer, since Brighton has had to borrow money, so this will be the first time. And if you recall, last year or the year before, we got a line of credit rather than just jump into the state aid note program. So we could exercise the draw on that if we needed to, and over the past couple of years, we've drawn that a couple times a year. So, you know, you can see that we are restoring our district to fiscal health, and we are relying less and less on our cash flow dips to meet the borrowing requirements.
That's great news, Dr. Disney.
I have a couple questions just for my clarification. So it looks like the fund equity is about 6 million, which is about 8%.
That's right.
What's a reasonable goal?
Well, the board actually has a policy that says they're striving to hit a goal of a minimum of 10% fund balance. So, you know, we've had a lot of financial struggles in our district. And I say all the time, we are, you know, obviously on a path to restoring fiscal health of the district. However, we're in good shape, we're not in great shape, we're headed to great shape. I just don't want to give the impression that 8% is great. 10 to me is a comfortable minimum. If it were up to me, I'd like to be somewhere closer to 14, 15% fund balance, because what that does is it allows a cushion for the district to respond in the event that there's an economic downturn. It buys you time, it buys you cushion to be able to adjust the organization for an economic downturn.
You know what's interesting about our fund equity percentage is it has stayed, and this, I find this fascinating, it stayed stagnant for the last 3 or 4 years, yet our budget keeps increasing. So we keep adding to fund equity, but because our budget, due to programming and enrollment increases, keeps going up, we can't ever catch that. So I think we were 9% a year ago, but since we generated so much more revenue, now we're at 8-point-something%. And so we just keep chasing that 10%. Now, if certain programming ever went away, and you drop back down to a 50-some million budget instead of 70, you would have 12, 14% fund equity today. But it's weird to look at like that, because we always feel like we're chasing our tail in terms of we want 10, we think we're going to get there, but it's hard to be upset because we're like, oh, we generated a bunch more revenue. You know, in terms of that, it's just percentage-wise, it doesn't work out.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Please. Okay, so again, I'm trying to understand this further. I'm looking at pages 173 and 178. 179, you need my glasses to see that. Yes, 179. So when you're talking about instructional support, and I'm looking under support services, which of that is part of these? Because I was trying to match the numbers.
So if you see the little star there, and there's a history underneath there where it says it includes people support, instructional staff services, and school administration. Do you see what the legend underneath there? Okay, so are you with me? Okay, so if you look at actually what may lay it out a little bit better is page 181. So this lays our budget out by function, and you can see we start with our elementary instruction and move on to middle, high school, and our summer school program, and then special ed, compensatory ed, and career and technical ed, as well as any, like our bridge program, our adult education. That's our total instruction, and then this is where the area that you're questioning comes in. Underneath there it says total pupil support services, about 2.2 million there. That's included in there.
Okay.
The next group of accounts are the 2.2 accounts. Total instructional staff, that's your improvement of instruction, your library. That's included in there. And then your school administrations, your principals, and other school administrators is all included in there as well. So it's all of your ancillary services around the instructional area.
Okay, I get that. Thank you.
And again, I think we should clarify the fund equity money is not necessarily cash in the bank. Then one more question, do we have enough money in there to hire 15 more janitorial staffs?
It's in the budget.
It's in the budget, good.
It was in the budget. When I amended it, I scraped a little bit off because it doesn't look like we're going to be spending all of that. So we need just a tiny tweak, but it's there in case we need
So
it.
is there enough for the 15 that we're lacking at this point in time?
For the rest of the year, I would say yes.
Okay.
And don't forget, we amend the budget one more time in June to get more closely to where we think we're going to be. But we always, you know, by this point in the school year, we have a really good idea of where we're going to end up.
I know that we were recently successful in the appeal with the state for the FTE credit. We got 100% credit.
That's exactly right.
Did this amended budget incorporate?
So what the auditors did was they created the second year that we didn't, the situation wasn't resolved, they created a receivable for the entire amount, saying the state owed us this money. They were sort of hedging their bets and created a payable for the other half of it. And so they left it that way, and when I created the 18-19 budget, I left it that way as well. And so I said to the auditors that if we make an adjustment to that, let's do it now so I can respond from a budgetary perspective. So we agreed that we would handle it in this amendment, and oddly enough, the verdict came in that we were getting all of our money back. So it affects the budget by about $192,000 additional revenue.
And that will continue to be a benefit that we will receive annually because of
That's right.
the precedent set by that.
That's right.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
And I know certain people out here are gonna cringe, as well as some people in the audience, but the energy bond, remind us when that expires?
Next year.
Next year, and that will bring how much?
$500,000.
$500,000 back into the budget.
Yes.
So at what point, when will we make our last payment?
In May of 2021. So it's the 2021 school year. I'm sorry, 20.
May
Yes.
of
2020, thank you.
20.
Andy, could you say a little bit more about that? I'm not sure what that meant.
So the energy bond was a bond, I believe, from 2006, and it was a bond that went into energy conservation. So if you're sitting in a room and don't move enough, the lights pop off on you, as well as other things, and I'm simplifying, but as well as other things added to HVAC and other units to try to save a certain amount of money. The thought process on those things is to put all these systems in place, and then you generate more than enough savings to pay for the amount that you're actually putting in there. The problem with that is you have to hire somebody to manage that, which never happened. And so were the savings there or not? I don't know. Now originally, I think the idea was to pay that $500,000 as a payback to that out of a sinking fund type situation. The sinking fund wasn't voted on the year prior to Dr. Gistinger and I getting here, and so that enabled it to be a burden to the general fund.
Just for the record, that was a bond that the board decided to pass, not going to the public for a vote.
Thank you.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
One more time.
2021, you said?
2020.
2020.
Let's not add an extra year. So that will be a pretty significant benefit to our budget.
Yeah.
In a year, essentially a year from now, 18 months away. Great. Any other discussion on this one? Okay. Item G, Unified Champion Schools from, is it SOMI? Oh, I'm sorry. I think this was the SOMI.
Yep. So this is a donation from Unified Champion Schools from Special Olympics of Michigan. They want us to accept, or they're offering us to accept $1,600, and this donation is going to go a long way with our Team Unified and other projects that we do. So we would recommend you accept it with great appreciation.
Item H, Board Policy 3131, Reduction and Recall of Teachers.
So this we received from our attorneys, from Truman actually, and this is a new process for reduction or recall of teachers. This is a replacement, Policy 3131. And in a nutshell, what this means is that because of all of the changes to evaluations and how it's done and how people are ranked in terms of their jobs, we have to select a particular way if there's a tie. That's pretty much what this policy is. So our piece is that if all things are equal and it's a tie, seniority rules the day. That's it in a nutshell.
The tie being in terms of classes.
So when we do evaluations now, the document might have 43 indicators throughout. So if you and I teach math next door to each other, and I have 25 years and you have 2 years, okay? And we go through the whole evaluation process and you score much higher than I do on your evaluation, and we get to a layoff recall. Presently, I would be laid off, and you would be kept. In terms of this, now we teach math next door to each other, we go through the evaluation process and we have an identical evaluation, our ratings are the same in terms of being effective or highly effective. At that point, seniority rules the day because all things are equal.
So, basically, what is on page 196 to 197, that's our current policy, is that right? And it's gonna be just completely replaced with
This
what
policy.
begins on page 191?
That's correct.
Is there a reason that Troon put this together as opposed to
You
the old?
know, we'll probably get a similar update from that. We didn't ask for this from Troon, it was just sent out. In terms of it, it's a good time for us to replace this one as we head into the spring season. We don't anticipate layoffs or recalls, but it's something we have to have, and we have to have it in relation to the new evaluation.
I would imagine it's a good possibility of having a tie, because there's only a couple choices, right? So that could very well be the case, that you have two teachers that are tied.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does our policy address ties today?
Not in a good enough sense. I think there would be arguments and grievances and all that kind of stuff.
Is it a tie in terms of the general category? Is that like, I don't know, I haven't seen the evaluation to know like if you get a numeric score, you just get highly effective. If you get a general term.
Right.
Okay, anything else on item H? Item I, a donation VHS robotics.
Again, we'll recommend in a couple weeks that you accept the $5,000 donation from First Robotics to the VHS Robotics team to be used for our competitions and supplies.
Any questions? That'll close for future action and move us into board committee reports, Board of Education bulletins. Item A is BAS school calendar. I'd asked Dr. Gray and start to add this to the agenda actually well before break, and the reasoning behind it was more of it's more of an open-ended question, and certainly some philosophical perspective from board members is appropriate. I've been approached by a variety of folks in the community over the last year, 2 years, most specific. It's been more recent than not, and in terms of our school calendar and a desire for a balanced calendar versus the traditional academic calendar. And it's more of a question. I know we're entering into a negotiation year presently, and probably not something we're going to explore right off the bat here, but something for future. Is this a topic that we have solicited the community for feedback and input on of interest? What is the interest in terms of level? And that's why I've got that. That's why I wanted to put it out. It's again, it's been multiple people over the last several years that have expressed more and more interest in a balanced calendar.
I would say we haven't asked this question specifically. I would say it has generated some response in our NCA satisfaction surveys, which ironically enough will be going up this Friday. But I would say a handful each time. There's probably a handful of responses. And what they typically call it, what I've seen anywhere from balanced calendar, most people call it year-round school. You know, that's typically what we hear. And the premise of a balanced calendar is kind of a 45-15 concept. So 45 is a typical quarter, and then you'd have 3 weeks off. 45 on, 3 weeks off, 45 on, 3 weeks off, 45 on, the month of July off is pretty typical. Some school districts have done it close to that, but there's a varying number of those. We've seen some counties look at that, some counties, work towards that, and some school districts. So if that's a specific question you want us to answer, we can ask that.
So isn't that a bigger question for the county or wherever you play sports? Because I know that's a huge factor. Or does that usually work into that schedule?
That's a piece of it. It's a piece of it for sure. Because you're in school all the way through June. those types of things. And it's a bargainable item, obviously, to be bargained down. So there are a lot of moving pieces to it. If it's something the board would like us to explore more, I would say let's put a specific question out to see how much interest there is, and then pick away at the details in relation. Kind of like a three-tiered bus or ROTC training.
Was that something that could get on the survey that's gonna go out?
We could add a question. Yeah.
Even if that's something that's well received within Brighton, how does that, I mean, obviously there's the consortium impacts, I mean, how does?
That's the bigger issue.
Aren't you gonna have to get cooperation from?
LATEC would be affected. The other piece that would be huge would be the ancillary staff we share from LASA. You know, at the county level, boy, would they love it if every school system started on the same day, had the exact same days off, and ended on the same day. Because otherwise, because we share people, it's hard to manage, obviously, and you don't always get your best scheduling options in terms of that. So it is a much bigger question, not only for after-school activities, but for sharing of ancillary services. Programming would be another one, because if a LATEC teacher, for instance, a auto tech teacher that we have, if you have a class full of kids that come from the county, are some kids done at one point and some kids done 3 weeks later? That would be a question we'd have to work.
If you have to be married to a teacher from a different district, you want the entire state to be on the same. But that's just me.
Spring break has always been.
Yep.
Dr. Great, has there been any discussion of this with other, I know we're just bringing it up here, but I mean, have you heard other superintendents talk about considering it and what the impact to their district would be?
I would say briefly. I wouldn't say there's been any significant conversation.
Okay. So you're going to ask the question, it'll be just one question on the survey. See what.
Might as well.
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt.
Okay. All right, thank you. Item B, outdoor education. This was another one right before the break, or a little bit before the break. I had asked Dr. Gray and Starr to put on as well. I came across an article actually in it was one of the districts out of Grand Rapids, and I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but they started this outdoor educational program, which I thought was something that was somewhat interesting, and I think it's something that certainly could be customized and kind of sky's the limit. So this is more than anything else situational awareness of food for thought and future consideration than anything else at this point. But you know, everything from ecological systems, tying biology into it, tying boater safety, hunter safety, first aid, lifeguarding, just there's a lot of broadness to it, but a lot of interesting components and opportunities that that I think would be, from my perspective, would be very interested to explore. I don't know again what the interest level of the student population or the community would be, but it was an interesting approach. For those that have followed a little bit of the DNR as well, the Department of Natural Resources, I mean, there's definitely a significant decline in outdoor activities and interest by our younger generations and populations, and so you know, it's another angle potentially of trying to promote and get our young folks into developing an interest if they don't already have one in some of these spaces as well. So
I'd love to know what's in the plate.
Our science class is tested every year.
I swam in it as a kid. That might be telling, right? So anyways, I'm putting it out there, just it wasn't looking for a lot of discussion, but I thought it was an interesting opportunity that one of the Grand Rapids schools was exploring. Okay, item C, board committees. So on our next projects, we spent a little bit of time in our board workshop last week discussing what we want the committee structure to look like in 2019. And we if we could put this as a formal agenda item on the next meeting on the 28th, that would be great. I will send out this document, the revised version from what we talked about last week. And if folks could, board members could provide input as to what committees they'd like to be a part of, that would be really helpful. Just to kind of frame for everyone in full transparency, we're looking at several different board committees and then having several different committees that are more of an advisory role for existing district committees that are in existence that are run by the administration. So we've got the executive committee, which will be 3 members. We're going to have a finance and human resources committee, which is a board committee with 2 to 3 members. We're going to have a bond and facilities committee, which will be, again, another board committee with 2 to 3 members. A health, safety, and policy with 2 to 3 members, which is another board committee. We're going to need 1 member for the Livingston County Association of School Boards as our board representative, and that's 1 meeting a year commitment. And then from the advisory side, we have our BAS Health Advisory Committee. We're looking for 1 to 2 members there. Our BAS Safety and Security Committee with 1 to 2 members. And then our BAS School Improvement Learning Committee with 1 to 2 members. So I will send this out in the next day or so. And again, if there's any edits or final revisions to this, please let me know. And then also of committees that you're interested in. And we'll have this as a formal agenda item on the 28th.
Could I ask Amy that you maybe put the commitment of what these are, in other words, you know, this Livingston County 1 time a year, right? Yeah. I think the executive committee, whatever, once a month or however many times that makes a year, just to try to give people a idea of a time commitment. Sure. If you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
On the bond facility, I'd say it's been once a month, but it'd probably go to 2 as we get closer to
the bond.
I think it ultimately ended up weekly.
Yeah.
You're in the thick of it, for sure. Yeah.
What about?
That might be next year, though.
Or even, yeah.
1 to 2 months. What about finance and human resources? What have we been
Once a
there?
month.
Once. And then health, safety, policy, once. Or is that going to work for you?
Quarterly, I think.
That's the newest object, since we went through the responsibilities. That's probably.
Well, since you've got a policy to it, though, would that convene more often?
No. I don't think so.
Okay.
It just may mean that since Neola delivers policies about twice a year, there will be 2 meetings a year that will be a little bit tougher than the rest of them.
Okay. Now the health advisory,
It's once a month, that's what
that's once. And then safety, security.
5 times a year.
5 years.
Health advisory's 5?
Yeah, every other month.
Okay. And then nothing in the summer, right?
No, September to May.
And then safety and security is the same?
The same as the week before, 5 times.
And then school improvement learning committee, 3. And do you know when? Is that broken up? Is
Around, let's say, October, November would be 1, January, February, April.
all right. Perfect. Okay, I'll get those out there. Thank you.
And then, when do you want us, to submit our emails to you about our request for committee membership?
Well, since we've got them on the 28th, the meeting's the 28th, right? So maybe the Thursday prior, which is I think the 24th. I think it's the 28th. Yeah.
We currently have the facilities scheduled for the 5th, so that would be, I would just leave that alone. I imagine that would still be
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do anything with it at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't cancel it or anything yet. Okay. Anything else on that? All right. Yes, yep, that was, I was gonna open that as one of the board report bulletins. Another topic we discussed, and again, as part of our commitment to transparency, we discussed in our meeting, our workshop last week, making some adjustments to our board calendar, or excuse me, our board agenda. And there was a consensus on the board that we are going to eliminate the second call to the public for 2019. So we will continue to maintain the first call to the public at the early stage of the meeting, but we will remove the second call to the public starting at the next meeting. So this evening, second call to the public is still on the agenda. This will begin on the January 28th meeting. Thank you for that. And go ahead.
I just didn't want to this part of the agenda.
Okay. One more item. Another topic we talked about at the workshop last Wednesday was establishing, the board and the administration establishing some district priorities for 2019 specific, so not looking into 3-5-year plans, although that's something we are going to be preparing to work on in our next workshop, is some of the strategic planning for the next 5 years. Late this afternoon, I did send a email to everybody on the board as well as the senior leadership with the priorities that we've identified. These are still very much draft and in no particular order. And again, this is a topic or a formal agenda item for the meeting on the 28th to start to dive into at least formalizing what are the priorities, what's one, what's two, what's three. So if you could take a look at this, make any edits, revisions, if you think something should come off, please say so, and then we'll talk about it in more detail and length on the 28th. And I did actually, to your question earlier, Mr. Myers, I did ask for that to be submitted by Thursday the 24th as well. And I'll get that back out, the revised copy to everybody prior to the board meeting, so you have an opportunity to review it and come in prepared for the discussion on it. And that's what I've got on committee reports and bulletins. Ms. Reed.
I just wanted to take a second to thank everybody that worked on gifts for the board members for the holidays. All of the handmade gifts and thoughtful things that were presented to us by all of the buildings in the district were just a joy to behold. And I do sincerely appreciate all of the extra time and effort that goes into that, particularly the cards from the students. It was very touching, and thank you.
It's great.
Yes.
So thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? Yeah, I have one other thing that I forgot to mention, and I made a mental note earlier. It escaped me. So I want to congratulate Mr. Stahl, Dr. Krebs, Ms. Mitchell on your success on becoming a board member for Brighton Area Schools and re-elected for Mr. Stahl. And looking forward to having you a part of the board, and we're excited for a great next year ahead. So congratulations. Okay. That brings us to second call of the public. Anybody wishes to address the board in second call, please step to the podium, state your name, address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
For the 30 seconds already. John Conley, resident of Brighton. There's a lot of positive things tonight, but I got a list and I got too big and I don't remember where I started and where I want to stop. But I'll start by thanking the appreciation regarding my father and the therapy dog for the Bridge Alternative School. My dad grew up 2 blocks from here. He was born in the house, basically died in, right on Grand River, just up the road 2 blocks that way. same house I grew up in, and our family built a house somewhere around 1920. And again, family's been here a long time, 1800s. Anyhow, he managed to get through the 8th grade. And then he wound up out in Nebraska under Father Flanagan in Boys Town. So he was a graduate from Boys Town in 1945. And then he entered in the Army Air Corps shortly after. So we've been very fortunate. Our family has gone now to where my kids have graduated from college. I managed to get to a 2-year college degree myself. And Brighton area schools offered me something that most people don't really know. But when I left Brighton area schools, I was a master certified technician. And I worked under my father originally, but what happened is in high school I learned how to do things more book-wise and learned how to take tests. So at 17, probably one of the only ones, I was master certified. And so we've gone on to progress. So I am indebted to Brighton area schools. My mother went here. I can tell you a lot of great stories. That's what the dog's all about, is to maybe help some youth that could use a little extra assistance. And I think my father would be proud of what's going on here in our school system. I can tell you for sure that he's been over and visited the high school and saw improvements in some vocational programs, and he was very excited for the young people to get that exposure. So on to some business. Somebody brought up the energy bond. I think it was Andy. Anyhow, that was a $10 million mistake. I checked on it first thing when I became a board member, and it was close to not even legal. The money went in the general fund. They funded everything, including the energy projects. And as soon as we get that off the books, the better. But that was a bad decision. Regarding the ROTC, didn't mean to interrupt you earlier, Andy, but somebody in the audience wanted to. So he mentioned and wanted to remind us that really the only programs open for us are the Army and the Navy. It's possible Air Force, but I doubt it's too close. And one good thing about the Navy is it only requires 50 students. So it'd be a good one to apply to, where the Army does require 100. And something that wasn't talked about regarding the ROTC is the possibility of a 0 hour or a 7th hour, and not taking curriculum away from students that have certain courses they have to take. There's a 0 hour option in our school system. We teach history, and we teach a couple other options. And in a professional sense, I can tell you, I got stand up, it's about me. In a professional sense, the auto tech class was closed. Health occupations was close to close. Early childhood, all these classes, business class, engineering CAD, were all on the edge of closure. Very short time ago. They are robust, they're full, they're at capacity. I understand there's a waiting room in most of them. Is that correct, Dr. Wright? Okay. So taking a chance on a 4-year program, especially if it gets funded, there's no chance at all. Because it'd be the same for these other kids and students, not kids, they're young adults. So in the automotive class, we're sitting on nearly 150 students. When I got here, actually way before I got here, I started writing back in the 80s, but we got so bad to a point that they weren't even looking at the classroom. We were down to 30 or 40 students and an enclosure. And then a little bit of work, Mr. Trombley, myself, superintendent, Dr. Yeslinger, writing down the line. She sat in that classroom just like the rest of us. What do you think? All right? Okay.
You're running out.
Okay, I figured. So anyhow, I want to share with you, the risk is worth it. We're in position to make a difference for youth. And I think that from what I hear tonight, you guys are going to do a great job. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin.
I'm Sue Ellen Aikens, and I live at 105 Hillcrest in Brighton. And I just wanted to have a chance for the folks that might be watching the video broadcast as well as anybody who's in the room today and the board, to remind you that we lost a 7th grader since our last board meeting. I was working, so I was late. I don't know if the board had a chance to acknowledge that great loss. But I think a moment of silence might be appropriate. And I wanted to let people know that if they want to reach out to me over Facebook Messenger, Sue Ellen Eikens, there are a number of ways that we can help the family through this unspeakably difficult time. He was a spectacularly talented and academically gifted child. And our school district and our community are much poorer for having lost him. He was a wonderful kid.
Thank you, Ms. Eikens. And I would like to offer a moment of silence to memory. Thank you. Does anybody else wish to address the board this evening? Okay, that'll close second call to the public. Our next board meeting is Monday, January 29th, or excuse me, Monday, January 28th, 2019. This meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.